everyone, and welcome to the Marketplace Risk Virtual Events Series. My name is Andrea, and I'm the Director of Events and Logistics here at Marketplace Risk. And today we welcome the teams from ActiveFence and Fiverr. Our virtual events are designed to help marketplace and sharing economy platforms successfully navigate complex risk management, trust and safety, compliance, and legal subject matter, so they can avoid distractions in order to focus on launching and growing. Be sure to check out marketplacerisk.com to access hundreds of hours of content, including our master's program, platform podcast, and previous live events, and to subscribe to our newsletter, where we keep you up to date on everything, including the upcoming 2023 Marketplace Risk Management Conference in San Francisco and the Sharing Economy Global Summit in London. If you're interested in presenting at the conference, please submit your proposal on our website by March 10th. We'd love to see you there. Thank you for tuning into today's session. And before we dive in, I wanted to go through a few housekeeping items. First, this virtual event is being recorded, and you can access the recording on our website. Second, all attendees have listening capabilities only and are otherwise muted. And third, do submit your questions via the control panel. If we have time at the end, we'll answer as many questions as we can. If we don't get to your questions, please feel free to email us at info@marketplacerisk.com and we'll get your questions answered. And now, without further ado, presenters, over to you.
Thanks, Andrea, and hello, everyone. Welcome, and thank you for joining our Marketplace Risk webinar today. My name is Inbal Goldberger. I'm the VP of Trust and Safety at ActiveFence, where we work with tech companies to help trust and safety teams protect their platforms and users from online harm. This webinar is going to focus on two aspects of marketplace risk that are close to my heart: spam and threat intelligence. And the reason I am so excited about this is that these topics bring two milestones in my personal career together. So I started my career 24 years ago, I can't believe I said it, as an intelligence officer in the military, but my very first role in trust and safety was as an anti-spam team lead. So today I'm so honored to have two experts from these domains on our panel: Liat Scheffer, Director of Trust and Safety at Fiverr, and Daniel Nisman, Director of Intelligence Solutions at ActiveFence. So pleasure to have you here. Let's start with a quick introduction. So please introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your role. Liat.
Hi, so my name is Liat and I work in Fiverr. I manage the trust and safety team at Fiverr. Fiverr is a marketplace. It's almost like Amazon, but instead of getting goods, you get a talent for your money. We have freelancers providing services on our platform and buyers that are coming to buy. And on our team, we have marketplace integrity team, which do the content moderation for the team. We have the risk team that deal with fraud. And we have the policies team that write the guidelines for the company and the community standards.
Thanks, Liat. Pleasure to have you here. Daniel.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Inbal. I'm Daniel. I'm a career intelligence professional, and I'm also a total OSINT nerd. At ActiveFence, I work with our tier 1 customers to make sure they have the best and sometimes bespoke intel solutions to make sure that they have eyes and ears on all of the bad stuff and bad guys that could be looking to harm their users.
Thank you, Daniel. Great to have both of you here, Liat and Daniel. Very excited. So to everyone that watches us now, at the end of this webinar, you're going to have to leave this webinar with more knowledge about spam detection, evasion techniques, and tactics that bad actors are using, and how to leverage intelligence to stay ahead of abuse in marketplace platforms. So, okay, this is my commitment for today. And Liat, I want to start with you. You brought us a case study, and the case study that you are about to share has all the perfect elements of a classic marketplace risk story. So people like us, like Daniel that just admitted he's a OSINT nerd, and our audience live for these success stories. So I'll hand it over to you to walk us through your case study from Fiverr.
Okay, so hi everyone. I don't know how much of a success story this is, maybe semi-success. We'll figure that out later. But in any case, I'm here today to talk to you about an issue that each and every one of you has probably faced at least once in your life. And I'm talking, of course, about spam. So here's how the story goes. You said you're a nerd, right? So everyone probably understands the references in this slide. A long time ago in a galaxy far away, this was our spam pattern in 2020. Stable. And in 2021, stable again. Along came 2022, and something strange happened. This was January, and again, March, April, and February, and it's kept its trend throughout 2022. So what is it? You probably ask yourself. It's a spam pattern that has been around since the beginning of 2022, been growing constantly since, and is directed at Fiverr and companies like us. And I'm going to show you one of the examples now. So these scammers, they're luring our users to pay them money by pretending to be one of the competitors of ours. They offer our users X amount of money, X amount of work in data entry for a small subscription fee of $50 to $70. Our users end up paying these $50 to $70 to a Skrill account, a fake one, obviously, provided by our supposed competitor. And then the scammers vanish with the money.
Okay, thank you for setting the scene. So I'm just jumping in to see if I understand the scenario. So the victim is a freelancer on Fiverr, and one day they get a message from what looks like a buyer or potential buyer who says they represent a different marketplace. They offers them to work for them, ask for subscription fee, and then disappear with the money.
That is correct.
Okay, so so you say that the wake-up call was the spam rate that was surging. This is what kind of rang a bell?
Yeah, so at this point, our spam numbers started to spike. And yeah. And
what was the signal or maybe signals that triggered this spam alert?
So by the time the attack started, we already had 3 internally developed systems to tackle spam. We had hard-coded spam rules. We had machine learning model that prioritizes spam, the spam queue that we have according to probability. And we had a machine learning model that identifies spammers at gate.
Okay, so just to understand the safety nets that you have hard-coded spam rules. And this coded is kind of embedded in the product, what we call safety by design. It's an evergreen safety net. And then you have ML model to prioritize the spam queue. So it's not meant for detecting harm, but rather just prioritize the queue. So you address the more urgent cases first. And then you have an ML model to identify spammers at the gate. Now you have to explain, how do you identify a spammer before they even do anything wrong?
So that's really a great question, Inbal, and thank you for that. Basically, to identify a spammer at gate, we obviously do not have their messages while they're at gate. So it's before they send the message. So we have to detect a certain behavior that the user is using when they're at gate. So it could be a disposable email, a dirty IP, dirty phone number. It could be even their registration behavior and the time it took them from registration and until sending the first message. It's a machine learning model, so it identifies the decision indicators, and according to that, it identifies strong connections to being an actual spammer at gate.
Gotcha. So many signals play into this identification. So it sounds like you have a very robust mechanisms and algorithms to stop attackers. So how come this new type of attack slipped through the cracks?
Yeah, well, this is why we're here, right? Before I can answer that, we first need to understand how spammers operate. So things to know about spammers. First of all, they profile you and learn how to go about your systems and your schedule. So if I'm in Israel, for example, they will spam in US time, basically. Second thing, they evolve as fast as your machines do. So you kind of understand what I'm trying to insinuate here. And they intentionally create too much work for you. And that's something that I don't think everyone figures out, but like DDoS attack, those things are basically behaviors of overloading your system so you cannot operate so that the scam would work. So what did we do about it, right? This is the point where we get to Frodo. So Frodo Baggins, you probably spell it differently, but this is how we call our system. It's from the word fraud. It's a system that was characterized and developed for our risk team. And it's an internal interface that allows us to write scripts without knowing how to code, because us in trust and safety, we're not the developers. We provide Frodo with a trigger, a predicate, and then Frodo applies the script in real time. I'm going to show you a simple rule that kind of shows you how it works. So it's pretty easy. If, for example, X messages are sent within Y minutes, within Z days from registration, and the text is something, then block user, basically the sender.
Amazing.
But there is a problem with this rule, obviously. Probably everyone who's here and knows a thing or two about this job know that there is a problem with this. It's this part. If you hard code a specific word into Frodo, the scammer will immediately write it in a different way. Like this. You see the little chupchik here? All of a sudden, it's a different word.
Yeah. So how do you go about, like, how do you tackle this? That when every time you hard code a word or just add it to your block list, they come up with a new variation to write it.
So luckily for us, all the spam, this specific spam attack has 1 or 2 words that they always have to use. It's related to the fact that there are only this many social medias that are breached and you can use for communication outside our platform, and other platforms already kicked them out. So they have to use certain words, but they use them in different variations. So what we did is basically our developers actually enhanced the tool called Frodo, and they basically added it the ability to identify the word no matter how it's written.
Amazing. So, I mean, 2 interesting things that you just said. First, that the attackers kind of draw you outside of the platform to instant messaging platform or anywhere else that they can talk to you, kind of just taking you out of this to a less moderated platform. And the second, that they just kind of manipulated it. So, and you said that Frodo was designed to identify all the permutation of this word. So I want to stress test Frodo. So did it catch writing a word with spaces between the letters?
Sure, of course. No matter how many spaces, by the way.
Special characters?
Yes.
Like $$ instead of S?
$$ instead of S.
Emojis instead of... No.
Emojis, no, but luckily for us,
Okay,
and I hope I don't have any spammers listening to this call, but luckily for now, emojis are not caught.
So if the next step will be emojis on your spam, you know that they dial into to this webinar. I don't know if it's good or bad, but maybe they educate.
Tomorrow morning, I'll know that they were in this webinar.
Exactly. So it sounds like Frodo performed very well. So just talk to me about its performance. So how did it perform overall?
So it performed very well, as you said, and it is in fact our most dominant tool to mitigate spam up until today. And it's blocking about 60% of our spam every day, ever since the attack, really.
Cool. And the rest of the 40% of the spam, how it's being detected by the hard coding?
So it's either the rules or the spam at gate model that we have.
Sure. So this is a big chunk of identification. So well done, Frodo. So what happens next? So after you implemented Frodo into your system, what happened then?
Let's talk about 2023 then. I'm going to go back to the graph from the beginning and just show you what happened. So remember at the beginning, I said, I'm not sure it's a success story, maybe semi-success. So here's what happened in 2023. I just don't see my screen. Yeah, I'm presenting 2023, okay. This is what happened in 2023. And, you know, the tale is not about how we stop spammers from spamming, because we cannot prevent them. Like at this point, we cannot prevent them from creating the account. But what we can control is how much of it is handled quickly and automatically, which is exactly Frodo's strength. And I'm going to show you how this manual spam handling trend looked throughout this period, which is like, this is the win in this story. And if you want to know what happened to those spammers, so now in 2023, they realized that we detect the spam inside the text. So they just moved it into images. But luckily for us, Frodo is such a great tool that we already had a predicate called has attachment. So basically we're using it up until this day.
Amazing.
And
I really like the manual handling graph to see the downward trend, because it means that no matter how the spam rises, your team is still managing it and even doing less manual work with this automated detection, which is great.
Yep.
This is really good. So sounds like Frodo was kind of the right tool at the right time to solve this problem. And I just have to put the operations trust and safety hat on me to ask this. So it sounds like Frodo did a great job in its recall. So to catch maximum of spam, I wonder, because you had so many signals into it, if you saw the false positive rate raising, because I wonder if you caught innocent players that, for example, used attachment in their messaging and they were removed with no harm intended.
So actually, first of all, our developers are amazing. And they developed a status for Frodo called evaluation. So we actually have a phase in which we can insert a new rule into Frodo and test it in evaluation mode. And it goes to a Slack channel that is fed with all the users that are caught. And then we can check the false positive rate before we launch a new rule into Frodo. So that's one. And in terms of has attachment, so we use many other criteria and predicates in order to identify someone that has an attachment and who's a spammer. It's not just the fact that they send a message and have an attachment. And if there is a false positive, yes, they will open a ticket and reach out to us and tell us that they did not mean to do any spam or anything like that. For the textual rules that we have 0 false positive, which is amazing. For the attachment one, every now and then we may get a case or two, and then we adjust our rules accordingly. But all in all, it's a very, very accurate tool.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Liat. So to me, it sounds like a success story. Users are protected, your team is protected from extra work, and hopefully the spammers will be just exhausted with trying over and over, and they will always see that they lose, and eventually you will just exhaust them out of your system. So finger crossed for this. So well done, team.
Yeah. We definitely want to slow the spammers down, and we definitely want to do something that is more robust upon account creation and everything before they even send the first message. But that is already a story for our next webinar.
Exactly. Fantastic, Liat. It sounds that the trust and safety team at Fiverr did a great job. So well done for you. And again, I see so many elements of a good trust and safety story here. So we had all the safety mechanisms in place, the ML models, the safety rules. We had bad actors that understood really like exactly how these mechanisms work and build, a scheme to slip through the cracks, and a trust and safety team that investigated the root cause. And we started this whack-a-mole flow with them trying to kind of go around your protections. So to me, it's like a classic. And I know that Daniel is kind of nodding here because he knows from the intelligence point of view how bad actors, spammers, scammers, and I mean bad actors in general act. So all these techniques of evolving and adjusting their techniques. So Daniel, I'll hand it over to you. Tell us how you see this from your standpoint as an intelligence director.
I'm just gonna stop sharing my screen and let Daniel share his.
Yeah, good idea. So when you adjust, so just tell me, like, how do you see this from your point of view as someone that really understands and works in intelligence?
So, I mean, definitely when we think of abuse in online marketplaces, the first thing that does come to mind is fraudulent products and things like that. But from our vantage point, where our team sits at ActiveFence, which is really a view over the entire online abuse ecosystem, we can see that marketplaces play a key role in the activities of a range of different threat actors, some of which you might not even think about. So, for example, extremist groups, even what we can call violent organizations, child pornographers, or those that abuse children and promote sexual abuse material. We're going to go over some of those today, and what I want to share are a few of the main, what we call in the Intel community, TTPs, techniques, tactics, and procedures that they use to get around basic moderation, moderation activities, and then how you can counter them with good, robust intelligence.
Yes, great. Tell us more.
So let's just start off with an example. I'm sure everybody here is familiar with the organization called the Islamic State, global menace online and offline. Unfortunately, this group is rearing its ugly head again in several places, and its internet activities are a key part of that. So one of its main tools to promote itself online, everything from incitement to fundraising to recruitment and base building, is through its media outlet called Al Hayat, which you can see up here with the logo. And if we look here, we can see that Al Hayat promotes ISIS paraphernalia in hoodies and baseball caps and things like that on online marketplaces, meaning they succeed in getting on platform to promote these types of things. We're going to be very cautious on which platforms these are, but when we're looking at all these different groups and seeing the array of activity that they do, we oftentimes see them selling various types of merchandise or other materials or services online.
You say fund their activities.
Exactly. Now, we see a few different trends. So when we see new political extremist groups or new movements coming on, we will see them try to sell merchandise or merch, as they call it sometimes, in order to actually fundraise. I mean, we see some threat actors, especially crazy conspiracy theorists like Alex Jones, who needs no introduction in the US, selling merchandise online is how they make their living. But other groups that are well funded, let's say like ISIS, they use this kind of stuff for base building. It's one thing to watch a video online, but it's a totally different thing to walk around the street in your neighborhood wearing their t-shirt or their baseball hat. In that same breath, we've also seen that especially online bookstores can be used for indoctrination, where even old classic manifestos will be sold, or even new books will be sold on even mainstream marketplaces. And we've seen, unfortunately, domestic terrorist incidents like the Buffalo shooting of last year, where that individual was indoctrinated by books that you can buy online and that were promoted in threat actor forums. And the last one is actually for disinformation. We have seen Russia and Russian known disinformants set up shop on marketplaces and actually promote books and other materials on marketplaces for those purposes.
Interesting. So I loved how you took a step back and look at the motivation of bad actors and how they exploit marketplaces. So just to kind of organize my thoughts. So you say they use it to fund their activities. So for financial goals, and then for indoctrination and spreading their word and recruiting, and then for disinformation. So this is kind of eye-opening, because as you said, the bread and butter of marketplace risk is the fraud and scams. So it's interesting, and it's less spoken about that we see different motivations of exploiting marketplaces risk. So thank you for this. So let's talk about how they do it. So what are the tactics?
Right. So we're going to go over 5 examples that we can call them threat actor agnostic, meaning no matter what type of way no matter what motivation or aim you want to exploit a marketplace, we see these five repeated means and methods coming back. There are obviously many more, but we can start. We'll start with the first one, which is basically threat actors from around the world. They count on us moderators and trust and safety professionals to not be fully aware of local linguistic issues. This is an example from a CSAM publisher, which is child sexual abuse material in Japan. And what they've done here, they promote child pornography, and you can see that they've uploaded it using a mix of both Japanese and English text. They also have different types of characters. They put spaces, and they're also mixing different terminologies. So you can find here terminologies like jr.idle, that these are known to the different pedophile communities online.
Wow.
The next one is intentional misspelling, where basically they will upload materials or goods, and they will label them intentionally spelling them as something innocent. So this hoodie that you can see says domestic terrorist. It is being promoted in a known radical messaging forum, and the person promoting it to raise money, he literally gloats of his ability to circumvent moderators by saying, oops, I misspelled it, as in terms of tourist versus terrorist. The next one is a little bit tricky, but definitely important from an intel perspective, is that these groups are counting that our libraries as moderators will not be all encompassing. So they've got different terms, hashtags, but especially names of medium or lower level activists that they idolize. So for example, John Metzger, who's a known Klan member, this individual named Varg, who's a musician from a European, what we can call National Socialist movement, but otherwise neo-Nazi movement from the eco-fascist stream. These individuals are simply promoting their faces and some imagery and not giving any other description. But they know that those seeking to buy these materials worship these individuals.
Wow, I'll just jump in, because again, if you take the average content moderator or even a trust and safety professional, not everyone knows exactly these niche characters that are, extremist in Europe or somewhere, to know that they're not okay to be. To the average person, this is just, a guy on a shirt. So
right.
You need a lot of expertise to detect this and say, hey, this should not be online. You just really need to be an expert.
Absolutely. And we're going to talk about how we can build up these capacities. The next one is external linking. So this does have to do with when the seller posts URLs. This is an example of a known neo-Nazi symbol called Al-Ghazrun, and you can see the t-shirts being sold and the items being sold here. But what they did is they actually linked out or linked back into the marketplace from a known extremist Telegram channel. And we've got a snippet from the Telegram channel where they're promoting these materials. So also highlighting linking in, or more importantly, on platform, linking back out to a known problematic domain or messaging forum is also a technique. And then the last one is satire. So we all know when we're talking about content moderation, especially in terms of AI, it's all about context, and everybody's trying to block the removal of satirical content in order not to stifle free speech. Well, threat actors oftentimes turn that over on its head. And we see this happening live, meaning they talk about labeling something as satire in order to circumvent moderators. And here we've got an example of a known Holocaust denial book, which is shared in many places and many bad places online, and they purposely label it as satirical, even though they're promoting it for indoctrination and for conspiracy purposes.
Wow. So before we jump to the next thing, so we have these 5 tactics that, by the way, 2 of them were part of Liat's case study. So we have using cultural nuances and languages that are not, mainstream. We talked about intentional misspelling, and it comes back again to Frodo and how it caught all the permutation of a word. You talked about using internal references and slang and niche references. You talked about external linking and taking users out of the platform. Again, it was in Fiverr's case study to kind of drag them, use the online platform, the mainstream online platform as just a gateway to draw them out to less moderated platforms. And then you talked about changing the category and presenting something harmful as satire, and then kind of to get away. Interesting. So I understand these tactics. Talk to us about this intelligence. So what's your approach? How do you conduct it? What is success?
So basically, there is no sort of one size fits all answer. The answer is that we are working against threat actors that this is their livelihood, and they're not just going to sort of raise their hands and go home the minute we put in controls. So they're constantly trying to stay one step ahead of us, and we've got to have eyes and ears on them to stay one step ahead of them. So it does need to start with having teams of specialists that know how to collect and ingest intelligence. And then once they have that intelligence, knowing how to deploy it at scale. So just to give sort of a basic overview of what you'd actually need for such teams, when you're trying to confront these things, the first thing you really do need to understand is you need to have a knowledge base, meaning you have to profile and understand the types of threat actors that could be exploiting your platform. Whether or not they have divergent groups, emerging groups, legacy groups, things like that, you have to know who they are. The second thing is you have to study their techniques. You have to study how they operate online, what platforms they like to use, of course, what merchandise they like to promote and why. And then if we're talking, especially from the global context, you have to understand their language. And it's not enough to use a translation tool. A lot of times these threat actors are purposefully using obfuscated language, slang, things like that. And sometimes they're also using that because they hope that we won't catch it. So it's about cataloging those terms that they use and putting them in our libraries. And the last thing, which actually we're going to now go from on-platform monitoring to off-platform. A lot of what brought our examples together was that we found these techniques by looking at where the threat actors are gathering in what we call low moderation platforms. It can be places that are messaging apps, deep web forums, but it can also be forums that are on the surface that anyone can access, like Chan forums and things like that. These are where these threat actors are initially promoting their merchandise. And oftentimes they will put a link, of course, to the actual platform. So having eyes and ears on the places, what we call threat actor forums, that's especially important, both to understand where they're linking out to, but also to understand what new techniques they're actually talking about.
Interesting. So you're saying that a lot of the coordination and kind of plotting and sharing tips and sharing knowledge is happening outside the platform in their own circles of chatter that can be on the surface, like on online platforms that are not necessarily, I mean, in the clear web, and you just need to know where to look for to gather this intel and then to feed it back to moderators.
Yep.
Yeah, I know that you also have this function of intel and kind of going a bit beyond, right? In Fiverr.
Yeah, it's not a tool, like it's not utilized by the trust and safety teams, but our security teams do that. They can scrape the dark net and things like that.
Cool. Daniel, this is so thank you, Liat. And Daniel, this is really eye-opening. So thank you for this. Anything else that I should no, this is it. Any final sentence? If not, I'll hand it over to Andrea to see if we have any question from the audience. So I'll just let it sink, people who watch us now, to think anything you want to ask myself or Daniel or Liat about spam or scam or fraud or intelligence techniques. Hit us with your questions.
Hi, yes, everyone, please submit your questions via the control panel. First question we have to Liat. What is your team mostly focused on in 2023?
So as I started saying earlier, we are mainly focusing right now on at-gate operations. So we are trying to close the gates as much as we can of Fiverr from bad actors from coming in. So this is all the effort now in 2023 is about closing the gate and not letting bad actors inside.
Amazing. I would just add that when you stop them at the gate, you save the hassle of later monitoring and removing and putting all this energy. So if they don't even get in, it's much easier for you to handle this.
Yeah,
cool.
I'm sure people probably say, yeah, but it's a clone account. Why don't you just stop clones from being created? But as soon as you stop clones at gate, they find a way to not show up on your radar as a clone account. So it's not as simple as people may imagine.
So for people who don't know what clone account is, are spammers just duplicating old accounts for new purposes?
So they create disposable accounts, basically. They come in, they send a few messages, they know we're onto them, and it's just a matter of time until we catch them. So when they know we're onto them, and it's not limited to spam, it's limited to gig creation, it's limited, the spammers exist in all of the UGC, user-generated content areas of the platform. And as soon as they understand that you can create an account, like do a lot of, create high volume and then dispose this account, you create another one, and then you use this account, and then you dispose this account. And yes, most of us know how to identify that this account is related to that account, but spammers are not regular people. They're very smart, and they figure it out, and they'll move to the next thing.
Amazing. So you're focusing on operations at gate. Perfect. What's our next question, Andrea?
Yeah, next question. I believe this is probably for Daniel. You listed many types of abuse in marketplaces. How do you prioritize them?
Good question. So really, I mean, this is an exercise we do with many different platforms. You have to start off with a risk assessment. You have to identify what counts as a risk, and then identify how prevalent is it on the platform. So we've got a lot of risks which we can classify as high harm. So for example, promotion and selling of child pornography, that's absolutely high harm. We have to match that with how prevalent it is. And there are certain ways to, of course, to do prevalence testing. Some of our customers like to add in external factors like bad PR risk and things like that. But you definitely do need to say, is this sort of, is this a drop in the bucket or is it not? And then basically create a plan to take each one of them on one by one accordingly.
Yeah.
Awesome. Some questions have come in as well. First one, question for Liat. How long did it take to build the detection algorithm?
So if we exclude priorities of product teams and everything, just a reminder that the tool already existed when I came to use it. It was already in place, and we didn't have to run into developing it in real time while we were under attack. So the tool was already there, and it was developed for the risk team. And when we saw this tool, we said, oh, it's going to work very well for us. I was working back then in the content moderation team, and we were like, oh, the risk team has something that can really help us, and we used it. But if we take out all the noise of how long it takes to develop it in terms of priorities and everything. So from writing the spec and until launch, it could be just 3 to 4 weeks. It doesn't take so long.
Wow, I'm surprised because it's a very powerful tool that allows people who don't code to do this. And it was just built in 3-4 weeks.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's an interface that you enter certain parameters inside, and it shoots a transcript. So it's not so complicated. The speccing, the QA, the connecting it to a Slack channel and everything, that took time, and having all the logs in place. But the actual interface is not so sophisticated.
Next question. We know what's happening now, but what is the next threat to be on the lookout for? For example, are we seeing increased efforts in IRSF fraud schemes? And if so, how are we thinking about impacting this?
Who wants to take this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think both of you can jump and say, what do you think is the next kind of big thing or the next threat that you are concerned about?
To me, as someone who monitors all the user-generated content on the marketplace, I'd say it's AI. But I'm not talking about the good services. We're actually embracing AI as a company, and we're actually encouraging users to have a service where they use AI in order to help them to generate the best quality result. But we're talking about people that just sell the product as is, or people that sell things that are scary, like deep fakes, for example, things that you don't know anymore, like the difference between reality and fake. And this is where it starts to get a bit scary. So I think that's the future now.
Interesting. So the users of generative AI for bad purposes. Interesting. Great. Daniel, anything that you see as the
generally, it's more of a trend. A lot of the discussion we see is about actual transparency reports and moderation efforts. So what we see is threat actors basically identifying the gray zones, meaning they'll say, according to this publicized policy, we are allowed to do this and they can't stop us. So it's helping sort of platforms problem solve for the need, meaning the sort of side effects of transparency. Which of course no one is challenging, but identifying those sort of gray areas and edge cases and how to solve for them.
Really interesting. So identifying based on transparency report to identify these gray zones where you can operate and no one really has their eyes on this area. Great, thank you.
Thank you. We have 4 more that have come in. I'm hoping to get them all in. Next one, why not increase verification to something more unique so that you can block something valuable and less copyable?
Verification, I'm assuming KYC, that you have more in the financial companies, that you ask for more information about the user, and then some kind of
passports was an example.
So first of all, marketplaces, they're not obliged by any regulation to collect information about their users, and because of GDPR, we're not allowed to collect information that does not have a justification to be collected because of GDPR. So we're not going to be like a financial platform that takes all the information from whoever we want. We have to have the right justification to do that. So the only users we can verify are the freelancers, the one that we pay the money and we get a certain commission from their work. And so we cannot do it for those who are pretending to be buyers. And that's one of the challenges, but we do collect other information. about them, and we're using it. We just need smarter machine learning tools.
Amazing, thank you.
Next question, in a situation where every user and seller must be verified on a platform, what are some key things to look out for?
Who
I
wants
think
to?
I can take this one. I mean, look, we work with a few different marketplaces, and what we've seen is they've started to simply collect lists of banned users according to all sorts of different signals. So I mean, the more background checks that we do, the more, there are publicly available lists, and you can also generate these lists yourself. But I mean, I would say it's important to identify the folks that are coming on to make transactions, and to do in terms of KYC, to identify if they're on any sort of internal or external list.
I would also add that, generally speaking, the fact that someone provided you with documents and the documents have passed a certain process doesn't mean it's them. And that's like one of the biggest problems, I think, is the fact that people can steal identities.
Yeah, we have also seen this on our side, that people even abuse this mechanism of identity verification to get in. So +1 to this.
Awesome. Next question. Yeah, what are some top trends in Fiverr and in broader marketplaces you anticipate will keep you awake at night during 2023?
Keep me awake at night. I think I already touched on that. I think the biggest one, the biggest challenge right now is identifying connections between two accounts that they're clones, because that can limit all our operational efforts as a company to battle these cases after the fact already. The idea is to be able to identify these things as soon as possible. And if you don't know that they're clones as soon as they register, then it kind of snowballs into becoming like a greater issue for all the operational departments in the company. And I think that's the biggest one right now.
I would maybe add that all the known less popular harms that we see on marketplaces will be more apparent. So the spread of hate speech, the spread of terrorism, extremism, and child abuse will become more apparent. Again, we see online platforms becoming more sophisticated in countering these harms, and marketplaces are not yet very familiar and fluent with removing them, again, because it's not the most popular abuse. I think that's a crack that bad actors will exploit. So spreading more hate and child abuse material.
I have to say that child abuse as a parent is one of the things that keeps me up at night. So definitely. Luckily for us, it's not the biggest problem that we have, but it's still like every time you encounter it, you're like, it's very tough.
Agreed.
Awesome. Last question we have. Also, have you noticed the spread or transition of spammers from one language market to another after they were detected, or were they detected globally across the entire Fiverr platform?
I feel like I have a spammer on the call, really. Actually, it's limited to English right now. The big scale spam attacks that happen in millions, it's in English. I think it's a matter of scale and operational efforts for the spammer, not for us. It's the easiest way, I think, for them to duplicate themselves. And they also have to create like a very capturing content to make our sellers respond to what they write. And if they'll use like something that is Google translated, they will easily pick up on the fact that it's fake. The fact that it's working for them is because it's written so well in English and it seems like a very genuine message. And I think that's the only reason why they haven't spread themselves to other languages yet. And I really hope they won't.
So you say, I mean, so English obviously is the #1 language, but do you see spam in other languages? No, interesting.
Nothing really, no.
Do you have an idea what to do when you do encounter spam in other languages and you don't have expertise in?
So we have a few tools that are behavioral and we have tools that are very hard coded. So I assume that when it comes to behavior, it doesn't really matter which language you use. So in that case, we're covered. But if we want to do like text-based detection mechanism, so we would actually need to feed our system with the translated version of what we're doing today.
And maybe it's more of a threat, not for non-signal based behavior, but rather kind of a normal behavior, but with harmful content. So for example, the CSAM, for example, the terrorism, when you don't have to do things in scale, but even, you know, simple transactions with abusive material could be a threat.
I learned recently that the bad actors, they aim for the lowest common denominator. So they won't put an effort into doing something that is very niche. So they're not going to go for a market that is small. They're always trying to get to like the biggest crowd possible. Like that Trojan horses only work on Windows and doesn't work on Mac, for example. I think it's a known thing.
Numbers.
Yeah. It's a numbers game, I think. Lucky for me. Let's see what happens in 2023.
Yeah, let's hope we didn't incentivize them to go to niches. Great. Andrea, is this the last question?
Yes, it was.
Good. So thank you. Thank you, Liat. Thank you, Daniel. It was such a great opportunity to have a chat with you and to talk and to be educated by you. So it's always a pleasure to talk with you. I learned a lot from this, and hopefully the audience also got value. So at this point, I'll just say thank you and say, yeah, if you want to ask us more, feel free to reach out. And yeah, any final words before we say goodbye? No.
It's been a pleasure being here. Thank you very much. You've been a great host.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Inbal. You're great.